Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Hello. Hello, my name is Tom Fargnoli. I'm with you today to talk about my writing. I'll talk about some of my books, 3 books in general. I never thought I'd be a writer. It was never part of my plan. I'm a retired engineer, retired teacher. I am a retired magician, and I am a previous deacon in the Catholic Church. And, you know, I just had a fantastic childhood, a fantastic life. I had everything going for me. Good wife, good family, good home, 2 children, 6 grandchildren, actually 8 grandchildren, no, 6 now, that's right. And everything was going just perfect. Then some unexpected events occurred. My wife passed away rather suddenly and tragically from suicide. I found myself in the hospital soon after going through a quadruple bypass. I had to face a decision that I never thought I had to make. When you're a deacon in the Catholic Church, you commit to only one wife, which means if your wife passes away, you can't get married again, can't have another relationship that leads to marriage. I knew that going in, but I knew it up here, really, not down here. So after 2 years after my wife passed away, I became very lonely. Now, I love being alone. I have no problem with being alone. But after 2 years and having been married for over 40 years and not being able to share your life and your experiences with someone really, really defined loneliness for me. So I had to make that decision, whether to stay a deacon and stay single and not have any more relationships or pursue a relationship. And so it was a hard decision. And I think that's what landed me in the hospital, quite frankly. But I made it. And now I look back and I'm glad I did. As I mentioned, these things started to happen. My wife passed away. I had open heart surgery, pressured into that big decision. And then once making it, a lot of rejection. So in going to my therapist, he mentioned I should write things down. Just write them down. And that became my first book. This first book, this Deacon, okay, An Unexpected Life, is sort of like a memoir, but it's a true story. There is a little bit of fiction in it to make it interesting. But this is not just my life story. I think it's a lot of people who, because of unexpected events, have to change the path that they were on. I was on a path to be a deacon through retirement. I loved preaching. I loved talking about things. I used my other abilities. I've used my magic to make my sermons, if you will, much more exciting. I would take a rope, I would cut the rope in half, and I would say, when you are not happy, you did something possibly against God, you want to put your life back together, you want to repair that relationship. So I would tie the rope together, and then I would hold it up, then I would slide the knot off. So I used a lot of different magic tricks to make things interesting for people, for the common people. And so writing all of these things down, it became that book. We all really live this life, an unexpected life. But through all the tragedy, through all of the things that can happen, there are glimmers of hope, glimmers of faith, glimmers of peace that come through. Have you ever seen a cloud, and the rays shine through the cloud? I believe that anyone who reads The Deacon will find those rays, because it's a very passionate book. It's a very passionate book. You'll notice that, I take it right to the hospitals where I used to go and serve patients in a hospital, and what I went through. I take it through all of the preparation that I went through to become a deacon. And I take it through that experience, the experience of suicide. Never did I ever imagine being a suicide survivor. And there are so many misconceptions about suicide. Everyone has them. I had them. You think someone maybe makes a decision to take their own life, but it's much more complex than that. There are many types of suicides, many reasons behind it. Some and most, the person doesn't really know or make a cognitive or a rational decision. So when I wrote the book, I got a lot of insight about suicide in general. And a lot of people were interested in that. They found it fascinating. And I conducted many interviews about suicide and my experience of being a suicide survivor. A suicide survivor is someone who has lost someone from suicide. Again, never did I imagine I would be one. But when I was grieving, I also found out that when you're grieving someone close to you, that grieving becomes rather complicated when suicide is involved, because no one wants to really talk to you about it. They feel that, hesitant to discuss it. And I understand. I mean, I would have been the same way. But the reality is that those suicide survivors really do need you to talk to them, and not just remember their husband or their wife or whoever committed suicide from that one act. You should remember them for all of the other things that made them who they were. So again, grieving was a little more difficult. And being a deacon in the Catholic Church made it even more intense. I just didn't know what to do. So many, I signed the oath that I would stay single, that I wouldn't pursue another relationship. It's such a tough decision. Did God call me to be a deacon? And if he did, was it his decision for me to stay a deacon and not pursue another relationship? But I looked into that rule, and it was established in 1960 by a cardinal. So I resolved myself that this was a man-made rule, a rule that really didn't make any sense. You see, I studied 5.5 years to become a deacon, and it's in that book, all the courses I took. And then I was a deacon for 5 years. But because I decided to pursue another loving relationship, I couldn't stay a deacon. I couldn't do what I had planned to do for the rest of my life. Being alone, as I mentioned, was never really a problem for me. But the loneliness of not being able to share those my experiences, little experiences, common experiences, really bugged me. I did receive some help, going through all of this, grieving, um, dealing with the suicide. As it turns out, my wife was the third in her family that did the same thing. So as you can see with me, it was a little more of a hereditary imbalance that caused this all of a sudden. By the time it surfaced 6 months later, it happened. So anyway, the Catholic Church made it clear for me, I could not stay a deacon and pursue another loving relationship that could lead to marriage. And as I mentioned already, I was aware of that. But, this battle of making that decision is captured in my story. Now, Rick, a local reporter, he interviewed me. He said, I'd like to understand a little more about, why you decided to leave. And so he got into it and he started asking me questions, and he becomes a main character in this book. And as it turns out, Rick becomes someone very special, which is, again, my little touch of fiction that makes this book so good. I've gotten so many good reviews. Again, my first book, I'm not a professional writer. At least I wasn't. But with this book now, I've been able to do the things that I always wanted to do as a deacon. But instead of now doing them in the church, wearing fancy robes, I can tell my story through my experiences. This is one of them. My other two books, The Wisdom from the Wick, takes place in a bar, in a tavern. Again, outside of church, outside of the fancy robes, just a man in a bar that everyone seems to go to. And they feel comfortable talking to him about their life. Not something they planned to do when they went to a bar. They planned to just having a few drinks with their friends. But Rick made them feel so comfortable. He was so approachable that they shared their experiences with him. And then my third book, which is currently being written, it should be available in a month or so, is Magnolia, A View of Heaven. And it's about a man who passes away and starts his journey into heaven. What's heaven like? Is there food? Can we walk? Will we see our relatives? Will we see our friends and our pets even? So it's a really interesting view of heaven. And no one can really disprove me because no one's really come back to say that it's one way or the other. But I think you'll enjoy that. But all three of my books, like The Deacon, are all meant for the common person who has these questions about life, the common person who feels like things have happened to them, and how do I get over them? Tragic things that tear a person's faith right out. But I use a lot of background and a lot of experience to show that these glimpses of hope exist no matter what your unexpected experiences are. I write from my heart. All the proceeds from my books go to a cause. The Deacon, all the proceeds go to suicide awareness. Wisdom from the Wick, the proceeds go to a scholarship fund. And my third book, I'm not quite sure who to send proceeds to. But I believe now I can say with confidence that I am a writer and I write from my heart. And, I think as Confucius once said, it is better to save one life than to build a 7-story pagoda. I think we spend most of our time building pagodas. God doesn't exist up here. God exists here in your heart. And so reaching out to people through my books, I've been able to do what I was driven to do. That is to touch people's hearts. So I hope you will enjoy the book. It's all written, it's all available, of course, on Amazon, but through my website, right? You can see in the little title there going by, thomasfargnoli.com. You'll read more about me. You'll find out more about my books. And you'll even see some magic tricks, because I do a lot of magic tricks on my website. And sometimes I relate them to stories. So there you have it. Again, I hope and I pray that your unexpected events, through them, you will also see rays of hope and of light and of faith. God bless you all. Thank you. I guess I'll leave this open for questions now. If any questions come through. Oh, what do I think of the state of the world today? I think the good still outweighs the bad. I think that the media today kind of focuses on the bad, but it is my experience that most people are good. But sometimes you have to look a little closer at people to see that good. And I think that's the same thing for the world today. Yeah, there's a lot of tragedies in the world. So a lot of, countries that really just don't have the everyday necessities that we have in America. I think the world is kind of like our own body. We have so many things. It's just an amazing, set of our brain, our eyes. Look at our eyes. The eye can never really be, they said the eye could never evolve. It was something that had to be created. So I think that there's good in the world. And I think I think things may be bad right now, and they may even get worse. But I believe just like the body can heal, I think the world can heal too. If we move a little bit more toward the heart and understanding people. Do I share my suicide moments with my friends or relatives? Certainly my relatives and friends know about my experiences. But as I mentioned before, some are reluctant to talk about them because, they feel that, it may cause injury to me or I may rehash those experiences. But the fact that suicide occurred in my family is something that I like to talk about. Suicide is rampant now in all age groups. And I was particularly surprised that it's very high in the young age groups from 18 to 22. When I was a deacon, I did a lot of funerals. And when there was a young person that died suddenly, there was a quietness. When someone dies older, naturally, it's identified as this person passed away due to cancer, his fight with cancer, her fight with cancer, heart attack. But when someone dies young, it's usually resulting from a drug overdose or from suicide. And I did enough funerals to understand how the family is feeling about that. So yes, I do talk a lot about suicide, and hopefully I can stress that there are so many types. And the people that, if you suspect someone who is changed in some way, their patterns of worry have intensified. If they start to worry about little things that never bothered them before, and that's some insight that maybe they should talk to someone that's more knowledgeable and get professional help. Hey, don't feel like you're imposing, because if you talk to someone and they get help, that's much better than them, worrying about the fact that you brought it up. Saving that one life, as I mentioned, is better than building that 10-story or a 7-story pagoda, as Confucius said. Do you think there are signs? Of course there are signs. Oh my, after my wife passed away, I used to find dimes all over the place. I believe that, I believe there's an afterlife for sure. And I believe we're guided. We're guided by guardian angels. I believe that. One time I was drilling in my car, my 1972 Volkswagen, and I hit a piece of metal. I want to know what I was installing: an 8-track stereo. I guess you probably don't know what an 8-track stereo is, but I was installing it, and I kept hitting this metal object, and I was thinking, should I drill through it, or should I get up and see what it is? And I went around the front of the car, and I looked at it, and it was the gas tank. Now, what made me stop and get out of that car and look at that gas tank? I think it was the guardian angel saying, "No, Tom, get out, stop drilling." But I believe we are connected. And I believe when someone passes, they meet their guardian angel. And their guardian angel takes them through the next steps. But there's not a big effort to look back to try to communicate with someone, because now that they're going to be following you. So I believe there are signs, but sometimes the signs are just so obvious to us, more than just a dime. You look around at the trees, the grass, the water, just so perfect. And our bodies, as I mentioned before, so perfect. There has to be a creator. Whether it was done before or after evolution, it doesn't matter. But there's signs. The problem with signs are that we always expect something greater than what the sign is, some grandiose fire. There's scripture that says that, you'll know God when he touches you. And in the scripture, there was a fire. It says, is this God? No. Was there a big windstorm? Is this God talking to me? No. It's a slight tap. So sometimes signs go unrealized because we're just too busy. We're too much on our minds, and we don't see the sign, but they're there. And then you pray for them, you'll feel them. Believe me. How do you choose the titles of your books? Good question. The Deacon was pretty much, The Deacon, right? But it was subtitled An Unexpected Life. Now, my unexpected life was the based on all of the things that happened to me in 1 year. Losing my wife, losing my sister, getting open heart surgery. And you have your own unexpected events as well. So that was an easy one, right? The Deacon, An Unexpected Life. My memoir, my story, but again, dealing with all unexpected lives. Wisdom from the Wick. Well, I mentioned that book takes place in a tavern. The name of that tavern actually exists, called the Warwick Tavern in New Jersey. So all the locals called it the Wick. So when they went up to have their drinks with their friends and reminisce, there was this man, John, who some of them were drawn to. So wisdom comes from John, and it comes in the Wick. So wisdom from the Wick. Now the last one, Magnolia, is about a town I grew up in, Magnolia, New Jersey. And it's a view of heaven, because this individual who passes away, he's 92 in the hospital, and he passes away. He finds himself in his hometown of Magnolia, where he can get candy bars for 5 cents. ride his Schwinn bike like he did before, but now he's not 92 anymore. He's full of energy. So Magnolia, A View of Heaven. I'm new here. What is your book about? Well, again, I 3 books that I'm showcasing the deacon today. And again, it's about my life as a deacon, but much more than that. It's about the unexpected things that happen to me and that can happen to anyone. Suicide, in my case, loneliness, loss of faith, decisions, trying to make the right decision, rejection. Nothing hurts more than rejection. Making my decision to leave the diaconate. I've gotten so much rejection from people who are very close to me, thinking maybe I made the wrong decision. Again, I mentioned the WIC, the life in a tavern, and a special man that shows up in that tavern to talk about things. And there's a lot of diagrams in this book, because this particular person likes to be understood, and he goes out of his way to draw diagrams for people. So those are in the book. And again, Magnolia, A View of Heaven, is soon to be released. I need another month to edit that. That's about life after death. What's heaven going to be like? Will we see our pets there? Some interesting. Is there sex in heaven? So I tackle a lot of those questions. Someone has a relative that died from suicide recently. I feel guilty when I think about why they shouldn't have done that, because it's not about me. How do I go beyond that state of mind? Well, here's the thing. They didn't decide to do it. It's not like they said, oh, today I'm going to commit suicide. No. It's a gradual step. You are very much pain, first of all. Those who have taken their lives are in such pain. Do you ever get really bad pain? I mean, I've gotten back pain before. I have ear pain. I had my open heart surgery. My whole chest was torn open. When you're in pain, you want that pain to stop. Suicide is about emotional pain. And it gets so strong, it can't even be compared to physical pain. It's so strong. And they see no way out. They see no way out. And so it's not, oh, I'm going to kill myself one day. It's a series of that pain. And how do I leave it? It's not a rational decision. So to change your mindset, understand that what that person went through, it's not a rational decision. Magnolia, the title of that book was, I lived in a small town called Magnolia. It was 1 square mile. In fact, I remember a friend of mine who won a contest of naming or coming up with an expression for Magnolia. And it's 1 mile of happiness or 1 mile of friendliness. I forget exactly which one it was. But there were an excess amount of magnolia trees in Magnolia. And I had one right in my backyard. And growing up for me I was just blessed to grow up in that environment. And I think I start there with the journey to heaven, because I was the most free. I was the most free there. I used to climb a Tarzan swing that hung off of an oak tree. Walking around, we had fruit growing. A very blessed childhood. And I think I was closest to God in that environment, but just didn't know it. So I'll entertain any more questions, but I hope you go out to my website, thomasfargnoli.com, and you can learn a little bit more about me, my books, and a little bit of magic too. Okay. Yeah. Magnolia trees were great. I can almost smell them while talking about them. Except they would fall sometimes on the pavement, and you could slip, so you got to be careful. Can I discuss the significance of the setting in your story? Which story are we talking about? I guess the Magnolia, the significance of that is because that, Jesus had once said that heaven is a lot like being a child. And if you're not like a child, then you won't see heaven. Now, he doesn't mean we should act childish. What he means is that as children, we're free from all of the societal and cultural pressures that we get. We're ourselves. And I think heaven is a step from there, becoming ourselves again, our journey back to ourselves. And I think when I talk about the journey to heaven, it's a journey back to our true selves. A lot of people ask me what made me take up the cloth, so to speak. I found, newer generations, the calling has kind of died down. Well, again, I believe the calling hasn't died down. I just think we just are not receptive to the calling. And that's not just for those who decide to go into the priesthood or the diaconate or religious life and at all. I believe we're all called. I believe we're called every day. It's just that sometimes we're not hearing it, and sometimes we're just too busy. I was. I was an engineer. I would come home thinking of what I should have done and how I'm going to fix this or fix that. But we have to take time to be alone. We have to take time to just settle down. I was into meditation. I think that's a great way of doing that, where you can just slow things down. And when you slow things down enough, you start to feel, I would say, guidance. Things make sense. Suicide, someone mentioned it, is the worst because when you think of the potential loss, yes. Every time, I'm remarried now, and it's very, sometimes it's very difficult. When we first married, my wife's husband died after 43 years of marriage. My wife died after 40 years of marriage. When we started going out, we were calling each other by the names of our previous spouses. I was calling Dorothy Mary Ellen. She was calling me John. But you know what? We believe that our spouses actually brought us together. I know that's a little crazy, right? But we do believe that. And I know everyone likes to ask questions about heaven. Will you see your pets in heaven? You will absolutely see your pets in heaven. And I write about that extensively in my third book, which will be out I used to wrestle my dog. I used to come home from work. I had a golden retriever, and I would wrestle her, Katie. And really, she would bite me, but not bite her. Her teeth would never sink in. She wouldn't hurt a fly, but I would roll around with her, and I would get hugs in. I would hug her that way. And in the book, I actually wrestle a lion, me being the person who passed away. And that leads into my angel's definite or explanation of why we do see our pets in heaven. See, anything that doesn't violate the laws of love are possible in heaven. If you loved your dog or your cat or your any of your pets, that love lives on. Any love lives on. The question is, while I think there may be a justifiable reason for suicide, I don't think that can exist within the current dynamics of the world. There is so much to deal with, and sometimes I see why people would just want to end it all. I don't think you should, but I get it. Yeah, I mean, there are pressures today that we've never had before. So many pressures. But you know what? Hold on to life. Hold on to love. Start there. Start there. And, pray. You don't have to say a package prayer. You can sit down in your own room and just pray to God and talk to him as you would talk to anyone, even if you don't believe him, even if you don't believe he exists. Say, you know what? I think it's a crock, whatever. How are you going to convince me otherwise? And then open your mind and open your heart. And you may get some insight that you would have never thought possible. But yes, suicide's not the answer. But again, the majority of those who go through suicide aren't making that rational decision that, oh, this is too much stress for me, I can't handle it. Now you hear about people that do that, and there are some, but that's a minority. The majority of suicide happens because of that painful state, I just want to, as we're getting close to the end of this time, I just want to say it's been my pleasure to be on this show. And again, my books, I don't gain anything from them. All the proceeds are donated. But I hope you've gotten some insight from me, and I hope that maybe you'll read my books. Go onto my website. I do some magic. I think you'll get a kick out of it. But I think it's been a pleasure for me to be here. And if I can save one life, if I can steer someone to a relationship with others, with God, or with other people, then I feel like I'm doing something important. But I thank you all. Thank you for your questions. I hope I got to most of them. And I think that heaven is a real place. And I think that once you're there, you're going to be so full of joy that you're going to love everything about it. You're not going to look back, because you know that your loved ones are behind you. And we don't need to, be saints. We just have to live a good life, and we have to be empathetic to people. Treat them as if they're vulnerable, because so many people are. Even if you smile, even if you're just touched and say, look, I hope you're fine today. That could be all someone needs to get through that day. Okay. So thank you again. God bless you. And I'll see you all in heaven. Not now. Later. Much later, hopefully. You take care. Bye-bye.